Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein, the host of Your Hired Radio. I'm glad you're with us today. I was in San Francisco a few weeks back, and I interviewed a bunch of people at the HR Tech World Conference. I just want to let you know that it was HR Tech World. A couple times I said HR Tech Conference, I misspoke. So we hope you enjoy the show. It's about all things HR technology. A lot of them are fascinating shows about the future of work and the current economy. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM here in Arlington, Virginia. I'm, as you can tell, at a conference. You can hear that background noise. I'm in San Francisco, beautiful sunny San Francisco, at the HR Tech World Conference. And in front of me, I've got this amazing co-founder, business leader, culture expert with a company called Weirdly, W-E-I-R-D-L-Y. And her name's Dale Calreburt. Welcome to the show, Dale.
Hi.
I'm glad you took some time to talk with us. So, you're all about culture.
Yep,
and
that's right.
Your company goes into organizations and helps them with their culture. So tell me a little bit about what your organization does and then kind of what your particular passion is.
So what Weirdly does is it helps organizations to find people that match and are aligned with their culture, their values, their purpose. And the way that we do that presently is we customize questionnaires and we use the language of the business, the catchphrases of the business, the business's brand. And then that means that the candidates that are coming through that process are having an experience, they're experiencing the values of that organization in the recruitment process.
Okay, so that's in the recruitment process, when somebody's applying to a company, you'll make sure that the languaging that occurs is in the value.
When they click apply, they'll get given a series of questions, and all of those questions are in the language of the company.
Okay.
And
they're behavioral questions? What kind of questions are they?
They're kind of fun questions that are trying to pull out how well that candidate is aligned with the values of the organization. So each question represents a value.
Like an example. Give me an example of that.
One of our most popular, you see a tourist that looks lost, how likely are you to stop and help? And then you have a scale of how likely you are to stop and help somebody.
Now, I see that question and I think, they probably want me to help that person, so I'm going to be really, really likely.
Yeah, I mean, we help people to write in a more complex way. There are people out there that wouldn't. There are people that are shy.
Okay.
There are people that
you find that people are honest?
Yeah. We do, and we ask questions like that aren't work-related.
Maybe I'm not honest.
But then sometimes it's reinforcing a brand message as well. Mm-hmm. So it's actually okay if it's obvious, because that's another opportunity for our organisation to push that on the candidate.
Okay.
And say, this is what we care about, so, you should answer the right way. If you don't care about this, then they can drop off on that question as well.
So, but you also do more, right? More than that. What else does your organisation do?
Well, that's what we do primarily, and then we're able to provide data on that. So if you have 1,000 applicants that come through this, we can tell you the data of that. And then those people we can bleed into the rest of the HR tech stack. So what that means is we integrate with an applicant tracking system, we can integrate with a performance management system, and so if a candidate comes through our process and gets a score.
So people who are listening, those things are the applicant tracking system. That's the software that when you apply to a job, that's where your resume goes. And we've talked about that on the show before.
Oh, right.
So our regular listeners, the 2 or 3 out there, know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
So you have an accent and you're from New Zealand?
Yes, I am.
Where in New Zealand?
I'm from Auckland.
Auckland.
Yeah, and New Zealand's a great place. Do you know, some of your listeners might have heard of Flight of the Conchords. It's very popular. It's a New Zealand TV program, or Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings is from New Zealand.
They recorded it. They filmed it there.
Yeah. Yeah, and Peter Jackson is a New Zealander.
Oh, that's right. Peter Jackson is from New Zealand.
Yeah, it is from New Zealand.
Right. So how is this playing in New Zealand?
It's going really well. 3 years ago we started.
Do you think New Zealand culture, I've never been there, but is New Zealand culture more Western, or does it have its own flavor?
It has its own flavour. It is Western. We're very laid back. We're a very casual kind of country.
Like a little like Australia?
A little bit, although we like to think we're very different. Australia's...
we like to think we're different.
Yeah, we like to think we're different. We're even more laid back than Australia because we're very small. There's only 4 million people, 2 islands, and we're far away from the rest of the world. But our thinking is different. Our thinking is we know our market's not big enough to grow a really large business, so we go global straight away. So yes, we have done very well in New Zealand, and we're in Australia as well, but we knew very early on that we had to get out because we're not going to make enough sales. There aren't large companies in New Zealand either.
Right.
There's about 6 companies with over 10,000 employees.
Really?
Yeah.
In all of New Zealand?
Yes.
That's amazing. I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
And probably not a lot more than over 10,000 employees.
Yeah, not a lot.
Right.
12,000 might be.
The max.
Yeah.
Wow. So why culture? What is that important to you? I know you've been a recruiter for a while. How long have you been recruiting?
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah.
I've been the same. And so, why?
I love people. I just love talking to people. I love helping people. And I think that recruiters, or recruitment in general, we help affect people's lives.
Right.
We help people make decisions about where they're going to spend most of their waking hours, some of their best hours. And I think we need to think about...
worst hours.
Maybe. Daytime, a lot of daytime hours.
Daytime hours, right.
Yeah. And so you want to make sure that people are going somewhere where they feel happy and they feel engaged and motivated and satisfied. Because where we put people, when we help them get jobs, that actually helps them evolve as a person as well.
Right.
And if they don't like their job and they don't like where they work, when they come home, they're not happy.
So what would you tell somebody who's looking for a job? Like, a lot of people, I think, have the ability to pick the company they want to work for, or pick the industry, or they, for whatever reason, they have that specific skill set. But most of us are just like, I just want to get a job. I need to pay my bills. Mortgage is happening. What do those folks do about like a company that aligns with my values? I just need a paycheck.
I don't know. I don't think people should do that.
You don't think people can do that?
I think people should choose companies first and jobs second, because you can find.
But it doesn't always work that way.
No.
I mean, it's amazing. Even though there's a shortage of jobs, there's actually a shortage of a shortage of people. There's actually a shortage of jobs in certain areas. Like it's not always easy for folks to change. No. Are you talking about changing jobs or finding your first job? Well, either, right? Yeah. I mean, you need work, right? Most of us need to work to make a living. I guess if I'm giving advice to people who are looking for a job, you need to think about being authentic. You need to think about... And how authentic? And tell me what you think authentic means, and how authentic should someone be? I think you need to be who you are, because if you're comfortable and confident with who you are, and people will buy that. People like that. If you go for a job interview and you're tentative and shy, it takes a little while for them to get confidence in you. But if you have confidence in yourself, then people buy that. Mm-hmm. And you think that even though I may not get a job for a while, or it may take, it's a little harder research, you think it's better to find a place that's totally in alignment with my values versus just a job? It doesn't have to just be values. It can be about the purpose of the business. You've got to believe in what the business is doing. Right. You've got to feel that they're ethical and aligned with your morals. I think that's really important. But I also think that the best way to find a job, if you're really having difficulty, is friends, family, networks. Right, building a network. Yeah, if you build that network, ask people. And you just need to as soon as you get one job, you'll get another one. And you love your job. I love it. So why Weirdly? Why did you guys name yourselves Weirdly? Well, the reason, it took us 4 months to come up with a name. Choosing a name for your company is one of the hardest things when you actually have a startup. We used to ask our customers, what are the weird commonalities amongst your staff and team that are not skills and experience? Ah, interesting. Because some companies don't know how to talk about their own culture. They don't even know what it is, but it's there. And you think the culture is the thing that people don't talk about, which is weird? Maybe the stuff that you would... Sometimes people don't realize what their own uniqueness is. And I'm talking about candidates, and I'm talking about businesses. And when you ask them a question like that, it just changes the way that they think. And then you get the really good stuff from them. And it's fascinating, the things that they realize about themselves. Like what? We had a company that, when I asked them that question, and they said, I've just realized that
and this isn't values, this is the journey to getting to their values. Everybody here likes to drink one particular kind of beer, or all the men here grow beards after 3 months, or we like to do this kind of social activity or that kind of social activity, or when we make decisions, and then we finally get to the good stuff. When we make decisions, we make our best decisions when we all talk together and share ideas, or we always sleep on it before we actually action something. If we've got a big change, we go, right, we're going to sleep on that before we make that decision.
It's interesting. So my wife, Alicia, back in the early 90s, she lived in Panama, in the Darien Gap, in the jungles of the Panama jungles, and with the Kuna tribe. And she was there for about 4 years, helping the Kuna tribe stop the Pan American Highway. And one of the things that she said they did, the tribe, they had like a kind of a circular hut, but it was a large hut, and there was hammocks. So the elders would lie in the hammocks and kind of be like in a half dream state, and then all the people in the village would be around in the circle, and they'd stand up, whenever they felt called to, and share their stories.
Wow.
It was just to a storytelling. They would tell a story, and then that's how they came to their decisions. Very different than what a lot of companies do, right? Autocratic. The president says something, or a business leader says something, and it kind of flows downhill. But it sounds like you're tapping into that, into the notion that the company is really about their story.
Absolutely. Stories are so powerful. And the bigger a business gets, the less they tend to tell stories. When I'm going to startups and small businesses, they want to tell their story.
Yeah.
And people buy that.
Right.
If you tell your story to candidates, they get really inspired and engaged. The why the business was created, the how we've got to where we are, and they want to be part of the journey.
Yeah.
And then, so when we do go into customers, if they're having difficulty articulating their culture, we get everyone to tell their story. I get a team of people or a cross-section of people and say, tell me about your experience here. What happened in your first day? How did you feel 90 days in? And what's the funniest thing that happened? Just as soon as people start talking and reflecting and laughing, that's the culture. That's when we get the really good stuff.
So one of the things I've noticed, I've worked in a lot of different companies, it seems like the bigger companies, the culture is not as good as the small companies. So my first job out of college was at a startup in the 80s in the Bronx. And we were like 30 people or 40 people, and it was great culture, even though there were struggles. And I think sometimes, maybe in New Zealand this might be more true, is that since companies are smaller, do you find that the culture is better, just in general?
I think new companies, it's better. Does New Zealand? I think so. I mean, New Zealanders like to talk, so they do share stories, and they're very social.
Yeah.
And because they don't, and there's a lot of open office environments. There's no offices. People don't sit behind a closed door. That's very rare. I can't think of a business that I've seen in the last 10 years that's like that.
Right.
Yes, there are meeting rooms, but we realize there's so much value in sitting next to other people and sharing.
Yeah.
And business decisions are made faster. You can communicate with someone who's sat right there. We're also experiencing a lot of remote working though as well. So you don't have to be in an office, but then we're using lots of tools, lots of communication.
Cool. So what's one of your best success stories?
A customer or a business success?
Sure.
Well, one of our biggest success stories was we got Air New Zealand's New Zealand's airline. Yeah, and we had built a really incredible customised quiz for them, and it's really interactive, and we've had thousands and thousands of people go through that quiz, and we've got some amazing results for them.
So what's the unemployment rate in New Zealand?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think it's around 5% or just under 5%.
But with 4 million people, I mean, is there always like a job for somebody? Does it feel like that?
It does feel like that. It doesn't feel like we don't have enough jobs. We've just got some people that don't work.
Okay. All right. Well, is there any final thoughts you want to leave about what you've been doing, what you've been working on?
I think that I guess final thoughts are just that I really hope that people, I guess the conversation we had a little earlier, that there are people out there that aren't going to...
And they don't have to be final thoughts. We can keep talking.
I know. I just say that if there are people out there that aren't choosing companies based on alignment with themselves, it's just a short-sighted view. They won't end up happy. I just really hope that people start looking deeply at companies and who they work for so that they can align themselves with them, because they'll be happier, they'll do a better job, they'll be more satisfied. I just think that's the way of the future. I really hope people can do that.
Awesome. And how can folks reach out to you and find what you're doing?
They can look us up on weirdlyhub.com.
Right. And Weirdly is WEIRDLY.
Yeah, that's right.
And you have a LinkedIn or email? Or
I'm on LinkedIn, Dale Calreburt, and I'm the only Dale Calreburt in the world. So
really? I'm the only Lauren Epstein.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
It is cool. And also I'm related. The name Calreburt, spelt like that, comes from New Zealand. So I'm related to every single one. There's not many of us.
Really?
Yeah.
So Clareburt.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome to another episode of You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm here at the HR Tech Conference in San Francisco. We've been reporting all week. And with me is Josh Burson, who is an expert around culture and other things workplace related. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lauren. It's great to be here.
So you were just in a talk, and I wanted to kind of continue that around culture and diversity and inclusion and what you see now as the intersection of this new workplace that we're coming to. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, even though we're at a tech conference, actually what we're finding is that organizations are struggling with a lot of cultural issues that have nothing to do with technology. Bringing people together in a more diverse and inclusive way, fostering teamwork and allowing people to move from role to role and job to job in a more developmental way, giving people the opportunity to learn on the job and not have to wait for somebody to tell them when it's time for them to learn their new job, giving people a sense of community at work so they feel that they belong and that they are included regardless of their age or gender or nationality or background or experience or what school they went to. So all these soft things are becoming really important. And so
they're not really soft things.
Well, they're right. They're not. They're not things like how much money you make and what college you went to. So they're actually really important parts.
And there's numbers behind this, right? I mean, you were talking before about what really is changing organizations' productivity.
Yeah, in fact, you can actually look at productivity or even cash flow of companies, and you'll see that highly inclusive companies, for example, have almost 22% higher cash flow than companies that are not inclusive. That sounds kind of funny, but it's true. We have data that prove that.
And what does inclusive mean when you say it?
Inclusive means people feel that they are, first of all, from a talent standpoint, how you get promoted, what training you go to, what job you get, whether you get a job is unbiased and fair, not regardless of what you look like or how old you are. And it also means that you feel comfortable that when you speak up or give a suggestion or talk, people will listen to you regardless of what you might look like or what gender you are.
Right.
So those are sort of easy things to understand, but they're hard things to do in businesses. And there's a lot of experience shows that, for example, men interrupt women a lot.
Yeah, that was in the news today, in the Washington Post.
Oh, it was? Yeah, that's been studied.
There's a senator, I forget her name, but she was just interrupted like a bunch.
Right. Well, that's actually happened in business for many, many years. And so those are practices that companies are trying to root out and do away with, but some of them are just embed biases that people still have at work.
So if someone's listening to the show and they own a business and they hear, wow, I don't really do anything around diversity and inclusion, maybe they got a couple of hundred people, what do they do with this knowledge? I mean, are they going to be like, well, that's not me and my company's fine?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a human nature problem.
Those pesky people.
Yeah, I mean, we're all like this. Do you tend to gravitate towards people who went to the same college you went to?
Right.
Do you tend to hire people that look like you, have the same background as you, that had the same experience that you
But they don't think there's a problem with that.
Well, they're wrong. There actually is. They're missing a huge part of the workforce.
Right.
They're missing a lot of opportunity for innovation and new ideas by not looking outside of your comfort zone.
And you think that's going to start showing up as far as the next phase of companies that do fail? Because you have all these companies that are...
It's showing up now. I mean, you saw, the recent sort of Uber story that came out the last couple of days.
Yeah.
You go around and look at high-performing companies, particularly big companies. They are inclusive by nature, and they're adding more focus on reducing bias every day. Not only does it improve their productivity and their performance, but it helps them hire people.
Right.
Because not all smart people are white males that went to Ivy League schools.
Right. Right. So I know you just moved to Deloitte recently.
Yeah.
So tell us what you're doing. What's the work that you're doing now?
Well, I started this business that does research in all different areas of talent and HR and leadership and learning. And about 5 years ago, we sold the company to Deloitte. So I'm basically responsible for doing this kind of work inside of Deloitte. So we have a business within the Human Capital Consulting Group that looks at benchmarking and data and analysis and new best practices. And that's really what I'm responsible for.
And so it's 2017. Where do you see us in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, culturally, as far as some of the big shifts around work?
Well, the big topic I was just talking about earlier is this idea of what I'm calling citizenship. Do organizations have the ability to create a sense of internal collective thinking so that everybody does things on behalf of the organization, not just optimizing themselves and their own personal career? I think that's going to be a huge topic inside of companies because we're getting so networked now and people are working in teams. And that's also going to be a topic outside of companies. Do you give employees the opportunity to contribute to their community? Are they connected to their local community? Volunteerism, those are actually becoming employment brand topics that are pretty important in hiring people too.
I just was listening to Timothy Leary last week, a YouTube video that was done in like the early 90s, obviously before he passed away. And it's the early 90s, right? So he was talking to people saying, look, this whole thing of networks, there's going to be networks within networks. And if you are, as an adult, are not plugged into someone who's 14 years or 15 years old, you're going to miss this. You're not going to, you need to. And he was talking about what's happening now. But that predominantly there are these generational rifts. Right, you had it with the generation of the 60s that they kind of rejected their parents and then they created this thing, and now you're having it now with this millennial generation that's also kind of having this, breakaway.
Right.
How do you think that's going to affect the workplace? I don't think we learned the first time.
Well, the millennial thing's been going on for a while, and so most companies now are very aware of the fact that they have to do what's often called reverse mentoring. Let the millennials teach the older people what's going on.
Right.
But I actually think the next big thing is the next generation, the Gen Z. They're going to be entering the workforce pretty soon, and the millennials are going to have to be careful that they're not the old guys. And then we have the opposite effect. People my age that are baby boomers are living longer, and they're not leaving the workforce either.
Right.
So what about paying attention to them? They're not out to pasture either. So we have this problem of generational diversity now in sort of 5 generations. And
but yet at the same time, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says, like about 18 months ago, we now have more jobs than we have people.
That's right. I mean, we're
so
actually...
what's going on?
Well, the problem is, of course, we have very low unemployment rate, but we don't always have the right jobs in the right place for the right people.
Okay.
So the big trend as an individual is constant reskilling, reinventing yourself on a regular basis. If you're not continuously re-educating yourself, reskilling yourself, thinking about what you can do to learn a new tool, learn a new skill, learn a new system, you're going to fall behind. And that's just the way it works.
So you recommend people do things like lynda.com or YouTube or just
all
constantly
of those tools,
educate?
lynda.com and all of the related tools, but learn on the job. Look for a mentor. Ask somebody who's doing the job you want to do for help.
Talk a little bit about micro-learning versus macro-learning, because that's kind of an interesting concept now. I think my generation, and I'm in the middle, I'm born in the 60s.
Yeah.
And, for us, education was a degree or a certification. But that's not the case now.
Well, it's obviously still true. There's still a lot of credentials required in learning. But yeah, micro-learning is the big thing now. When you want to learn a skill, you can probably find a video or an article or even an expert that can teach you that skill in a couple of minutes. And you can learn it online. We have access to all this content. And so rather than sign up for a $5,000 course that takes 6 months to complete, you can go and find content online and teach yourself. Now, not everybody has the time to teach themselves, and sometimes it takes a lot of effort. So we still also have what we call macro learning too, traditional education. But the micro learning part of learning is growing so fast that that's what people really want at work. Plus, there's the issue of, I'm in the middle of doing a project and I just ran into something I don't know how to do. Can somebody or some content teach me how to do that right now in the flow of work?
Right. And there are tools that are coming out to help people do that.
And there's tools coming out to do that.
Like what?
Well, that's the next generation of learning management systems. Cornerstone, Degreed, EdCast, PathGather.
Have you heard of Smartly?
Smartly,
yeah. So Tom, who created Rosetta Stone, created this thing called Smartly, which is on your phone, one interaction every 7 seconds with what's going on, and you learn very quickly.
Exactly, yeah.
So what do you think about the artificial intelligence coming into the workplace?
Well, it's here. I mean, it's already here. I mean, people probably.
How do you think it's going to affect?
Well, I think people don't realize they've already got artificial intelligence under the covers of a lot of their HR tools. But what I think is going to be maybe the most significant is the conversational aspect of AI. AI tools understand your language, so you can talk to them. So instead of going into a web page and doing a search and trying to find out how to select your, 401k plan or whatever it may be in HR, you can now ask the system a question and it will give you an answer and go iterate through a conversation. So that's a big change in the way HR technology is being used. And then the other part of AI that's really growing is just general predictive analytics. There's now AI software that can visually analyze a video interview and determine if you're telling the truth or if you're under stress when you're answering a certain question to understand, your true capabilities for the job. And that's coming, that's new. But those are all things AI is starting to do at work.
So what's going to happen with jobs, right? I mean, we've gone through several revolutions. The Industrial Revolution, where everyone got out of the farm fields, and a bunch of people had to get into factories.
Right.
We're talking about companies wanting to improve their profits, which means reduce their expenses, which means reduce headcount. Fundamentally, a lot of companies want to automate things.
Right.
But we got more people that need jobs. Forget about what you know, what's your gut about this?
What happens in these automation projects is you bring in technology, you automate a bunch of tasks, you eliminate a bunch of jobs, and lo and behold, a bunch of new jobs just got created. Jobs to curate the technology, to train the technology, to handle all the people practices that didn't get done by the technology. And generally what our research finds is that 75% of the time or more, a new job is created that is a better job than the one before.
But you think with the drive to increase profits and the drive to reduce expenses, increase productivity, do you think that's squeezing the worker out of squeezing, putting automation in place of a person, and enough so that you really don't need people?
Well, smart companies use automation not just to reduce costs, but to improve customer service. Because if you can reduce costs, your competitor can reduce costs, and you're not going to drive any competitive advantage. The key is to figure out how to use the technology and then wrap it in the customer service and the human interactions that make people want to do business with you. Like you can order a plane ticket online and it works fine. But if you then call the airline and they don't answer, you're going to be pretty unhappy if you want to change that ticket and you can't get your money back. So the human part of it is still there. It's just sort of has to wrap itself around the new technology.
Anything you want to leave us with? Any last thoughts?
I guess as an HR guy, I just want to encourage you to sort of help your HR department deal with all these issues, because they're still, in many cases, in the middle of all this, trying to keep up. And I really think the HR profession has to do a really important job of bringing all this technology into the workforce in a positive way.
Cool. And how can people find you and get a hold of your content?
You can go to bersin.com, bersin.com, and I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn. Easy to reach.
Gotcha. Josh, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for listening to You're Hired Radio here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Thanks for listening to our show. If you're interested in getting on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or follow us on Facebook at You're Hired. And you can join my meetup where we teach interview skills at interviewskills-to-get-the-job at meetup.com. Again, I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Hi, welcome to another episode of You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm here in San Francisco at the HR Technology Conference. I'm having a great time, and I'm sitting down with Jerome Ternynck from SmartRecruiters.
Yeah.
And I met Jerome last year. His company, SmartRecruiters, has built a piece of software that helps companies track the resumes that you submit. But not just the resumes, but the whole interview cycle. And it's an amazing piece of software. I started using SmartRecruiter, I think it was about 3 or so years ago, maybe 4, when it was a free version, and now they're selling it, and they're doing really, really well. So I'm really glad to have Jerome here, because he's been in this industry forever. And he's from France, so he has a little accent. But welcome to the show, Jerome.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you for having me.
So, what can you tell people about what happens when they're interested in a company? What's the behind the scenes, the plumbing, and how does that affect them?
Yeah, I think most people today experience it as a very boring application form that ends up in a black box. Right?
Yes, right.
And you never hear back from them. And so this is what we're trying to change at SmartRecruiters. And we're really focused on 2 things. One is, how do we make your application experience easy, and so one-click apply, and so you can easily connect to companies. And then second, how do we help companies keep you informed? Because it's not that companies don't want to tell you what's happening, it's really that they're receiving a lot of resumes, and for them to keep everybody informed is kind of a struggle. And that's really what we're trying to do behind the scene, is help employers be better employers.
Right. So what can somebody do if they're submitting their resume? First of all, I know that if I submit my resume to a company that's one of your clients, there's like a little bit, I know it's a SmartRecruiter thing,
Yeah.
right? So what can I do to increase my chances of getting seen?
Yeah, I think you increase your chances by adding a personal note to the hiring team. I think the long offer or the long resume and motivation letter and so on are like, they don't get read, right? So I recommend to go back to a simple message that says, hey, I'd love to talk to you about my experience. I think I'm a good candidate for this and that reason. Just make it less formal, more human, more approachable. That we see works well. Obviously, make sure your resume is clear and clean. That's like basics. And then engage with the hiring team around the process. So go and find them on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Go connect with the people you know in the org, and just be an active applicant. And I think my main advice would be, rather than doing 25 applications blindly to a bunch of companies, pick 5, research them well, connect with them, and just get your foot in the door.
Yeah, so Jerry Crispin on the show said that if I get referred into a company, my chances of getting an interview go up by 300%. So what you're saying is, and by researching them, maybe go on LinkedIn or look on the internet,
Yes.
find out, and maybe get a referral.
Yes.
Like I've actually gotten SmartRecruiter referral links. When somebody within the company sends me a little link saying, hey, Mary just wants me to submit, and then the recruiter knows that Mary, who works at the company, has me as a referral,
Yeah.
and that makes a difference.
Yeah, and we also allow the people to submit a recommendation. So you can actually say, I applied to this company, I know this person, and then the person can give a recommendation.
Oh, nice.
And that really helps. And I think the core behind it is, try to differentiate yourself in the application process. Just don't be another resume, another thing. We're trying to make it more personal, and that really helps.
So you've been in the industry for a while. What do you see changing for employers and employees?
I think employers realize that recruiting is marketing. They understand the value of their brand, and they understand that if they don't behave well with candidates, they're not going to get good candidates, or they're not going to get good brand out of everybody. And so I think there's a big drive for HR to be more of a marketing function, where the notion of candidate relationship management works, and it becomes more important. And I think as candidates, I would say we are human beings, right? We have the right to be treated as such, not as an applicant and a number. We are human beings, and we are people, right? And so that I think businesses realize it more and more.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see the industry going, since you guys are like on the cutting edge? What would you like, or maybe what would companies like, and what would people like, all the people who are applying, where's that intersection?
Yeah, I think the intersection is in the application of modern technology and specifically of artificial intelligence, where the future goes towards allowing people to express interest only in jobs where they are qualified, and in the other side, allowing candidates or allowing jobs to be reached to the right people. So increase the quality of the match so that you don't have 1,000 people applying to 1,000 jobs and they're all always not qualified, and it's a bad experience for both sides. But that AI tool will actually recommend jobs to you as a candidate.
Really?
Yeah.
So how would it know? How would an artificial intelligence know that this job at say SmartRecruiters or IBM or Accenture or wherever would be good for me?
Because the AI, and this is what we've been working on, the AI reads resumes from millions or hundreds of millions of people. We see the people that are coming into the system. We see who gets rejected, who gets interviewed, and ultimately who gets hired, right? And so we can detect pattern and career paths, and we can actually pretty accurately predict that if you're going to apply to this job, you're going to be going for an interview and maybe get hired.
Right. Yeah. So you create a key, a validated key that then goes back, and then the company key. Now, so are those keys based on the job title, or what? Because now companies are talking about hiring people that are a little more fluidic and amorphous. Like, it's not like I need an accountant. It's like I need someone who can do accounting, but also maybe a little bit of marketing and a little bit of this.
Yeah. So we actually analyze, obviously, job titles, but job descriptions, skills, and behaviors of that particular company. So the machine learns from the behavior of the company. And then we analyze the market at large, so similar companies, similar skills, education, degrees, and then people who have similar profile or attributes as you do, and we track over 20 different attributes and are in those jobs, right? So it's actually a really good predictor of match. It's not going to say you should hire Bob or you should accept this job, but it's going to say you guys should talk.
And does it give a sense of what's the percentage confidence of?
Yeah.
Like more than 50%.
Yeah, exactly. It will give you a fit score, and on the candidate side, will say, you can try to apply, but your chances are low, right? Be aware. And on the recruiter side, will say, actually, out of the 100 resumes you receive, those 10 are they look like people you should be looking at.
And so, when you're talking about taking in all that data, it could be looking at things that you really have no control over, and one you may not even know that you have.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's right, because the machine will augment your data, right? So you went to University of Michigan and you did a major in physics, and that's on your resume. But the machine knows that actually it's interesting that people who went to University of Michigan and had a major in physics have tended to have this kind of career path, work for that kind of company. Yeah. So the AI will augment the data you submit to try and put it in context and make a good recommendation.
Is that creepy?
I think it's creepy if it's misused. If it's only for the purpose of connecting people to jobs, I think it's a beautiful thing, and we can actually leverage machines to make recruiting human again.
Really?
Yeah.
So say more about that.
Well, today recruiting is a disconnected process where anonymized applicants are pushed into machines that are really not working. Recruiters spend a lot of time in filtering through resumes. They don't answer to candidates. Candidates hate this process, so do recruiter. Now you take all of the administrative and matching out of the equation, what is left? A candidate who's applying to the right job and a recruiter who just received a great resume, and at the end you have two people who are going to meet and have a good conversation.
Right. So you think it'll be give the recruiter and the person more time to get to know each other.
Yes,
and
exactly.
have conversation.
Yeah, and have a more relevant conversation.
Do you see anything else coming up on the horizon for folks who want to know?
Yeah, I think what's coming on the horizon, Google for Jobs was recently announced.
What is it?
Google
for Jobs, right?
Yeah, Google
yes.
for Jobs. And I think that's going to be a changer in the market, obviously.
How so?
Well, Google's going to start aggregating jobs. And
from every company.
From every company. And try and do like Google Travel or Google Movie and so on, kind of categorize those jobs and have you bypass the Indeed, Monster, and all the job boards, right? Because today when you search for jobs, sometimes you start in Google, then you go on Indeed. From Indeed you go to Monster. From Monster you go to the employer, and then you are in a system where you are in for a 40-minute application process, right? It shouldn't be the case.
Right.
So we've been working with Google actually to get employer jobs straight into the search engine, just like when you search for travel now, they send you straight to the airline. You don't go to Expedia anymore.
Right.
And that's what they're going to do to Google Jobs, and I think trying to make that search more effective, more fluid.
Wow, that's really interesting. So tell us, how's the company going, and are you guys hiring?
Yeah, so our company is growing great, over 100% growth in people last year, and more so in revenue. We now have about 200 people here in San Francisco and internationally. And yeah, we are hiring all the time.
So what's the culture like at SmartRecruiters?
Our culture at SmartRecruiters is defined by every person that joins the company. A lot of people screen for culture fit. I actually screen for culture contribution.
Say more about what's culture contribution mean.
So one of my questions I always ask to a candidate is, okay, what are you going to bring to the company, and how will your culture, your background, what you have done be additive to our culture? And so this speaks to diversity and overall inclusion, and having a culture that feeds from the sum of all, as opposed to trying to replicate everybody. And that's who we are.
So if somebody wants to get a job at SmartRecruiters, what kind of jobs what kind of people are you hiring? Skills. Yeah,
skills. We're hiring salespeople, sales development, and sales. So from entry level to senior level.
In what markets?
So we're hiring in Spokane, Washington, and in San Francisco primarily. And those are good sales jobs. We take actually people right out of school or college and just train them into being high-end sales enterprise software salespeople, which is a good career. We're hiring consultants, so people who help implement, and so those are people who can manage customers and have an experience in recruiting, understand recruiting already, so this is not junior jobs. And then we're hiring developers, software developers,
right.
But those are our primary development centers in Europe, so those jobs are in Europe.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, is there anything you want to tell our listeners about what's going on in this industry? That it's very fascinating what you said. I'm sure they'll probably reach out to your site. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think for businesses who listen to us and business owners, I would say you are who you hire.
Right.
As simple as that. Who you hire defines your ability to serve customers, to innovate. Frankly, it defines who you are as a person. And so make sure you pay attention to those candidates and that you hire the right person for the right job.
Yeah, I like the question you posed is not are you a culture fit based on our culture, but are you a culture fit based on what I want you to contribute? What can you contribute to bring to the party?
Yeah.
And that is really quite revolutionary.
Yes.
Well, Jerome, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Thanks for listening to our show. If you're interested in getting on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or follow us on Facebook at You're Hired. And you can join my meetup where we teach interview skills at interviewskillstogetthejob at meetup.com. Again, I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Welcome to another episode of You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm here in beautiful and sunny San Francisco again this week for the HR Tech Conference. I'm looking out over Alcatraz Island and some beautiful boats kicking up waves in the bay here. It's a spectacular day. Sitting with me is Bob Blake from the FBI. Bob's been with the FBI for the last 11 years.
Yes.
And he is responsible for IT, the information technology sector. And he's going to talk about exactly what that means. But he's had an interesting career. So we're going to get a sense of what it's like to work at the FBI. And it's actually been quite the day because there was a shooting in Alexandria earlier.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stuff going on. So thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about your career at the FBI.
Okay, thanks. Well, I wish I were in charge of all of the IT, but I just take care of our case management applications. And not to make that sound small, because all agents, analysts, and professional support people use Sentinel.
And Sentinel is the name for the software that keeps track of all the cases. Ongoing investigations.
Right. And cases is our lifeblood. Right. Everything we do, all investigations, they're associated with a case.
And is all the evidence kept there too?
Not all evidence, but
a lot of
we do have a place for evidence being there too. Right. We also keep evidence down at our lab in Quantico and various other places. Yes, we do have places in Sentinel that to identify the evidence that is recovered.
So it's an important resource for FBI agents who are doing investigative work, not just that one case, but many cases may kind of contribute, and all that data kind of helps them get their job done.
It helps them to tie everything together.
Yeah, right. So how long have you been there? How long have you been doing this work?
At the FBI or?
Yeah. So how long have you been at the FBI now? For 11 years.
For 11 years,
I've been doing the IT has been...
I've been doing IT the whole time.
Oh, the whole time?
Yeah. Now, my position right now is Chief of Staff for the IT Applications and Development and Data Division. Right
and
now,
so what is it that entails? Just Sentinel?
No, that is for our major apps. We have 7 major apps, which is Sentinel, Delta, Guardian, and various different sub apps.
All things that the agents use.
All things agents use. And then we also have our another section that takes care of mainframe apps, and they have, right around 100 apps. We're trying to cut those down, but they have a lot of apps that they're taking care of currently.
So what's it like? What's a day like for you?
Oh, there's no days the same, because here at the conference they were talking about, look at what you're going to do today, tomorrow, and the day after. And then there's also what did I not get done yesterday? Same thing for us. Okay, today we need to talk about releasing the next version of Sentinel. And we need to start getting some new staff hired. And we need to review budget, and on and on. There's so many things that we're doing just to keep the division running.
And you've been working before, so before this you were at the White House for 6 years?
I was at the White House for 6 years, yes.
And before that you were?
Before that I contracted for a while, and then I started off in the Air Force for 8 years.
That's great. Thanks for serving.
Oh, thank you.
And what did you do in the Air Force?
In the Air Force I did electronics, computer, crypto, and communications equipment.
Neat. So you've been with the government kind of for your whole career?
Yes.
But in different aspects?
Different aspects, 37 years so far.
Now, was this a kind of a circuitous route, or did you plan this out?
I always wanted to go where I could make a difference, where I could help improve the IT structures or the operation of the business, which is why I left the White House and came to the FBI, because I figured that I've got a lot of experience. I think I can help out.
Right.
And so far, I'm really pleased with what I've been able to do.
And how does working at the FBI differ from some of the other work that you've done? Or is it like the fact that it's the FBI, is that kind of irrelevant to the work that you do, or is it really important?
It's important. It's you cannot beat the mission of the FBI. When you watch the news...
You cannot beat the mission?
You can't beat the mission that we have.
You mean it's a very compelling mission?
Yes, to keep the country and the world safe.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great mission. You watch the news and say, okay, the FBI arrested this person this week, or you took down a terrorist. Say, they were using Sentinel. So I had a little bit part in them taking that down. And for an IT guy to say, oh yeah, we helped in helping the country remain safe, That's wonderful.
That's awesome. That brings a certain esprit de corps, I imagine, too.
Esprit de corps, pride in our work, yeah.
So they're not just programmers, they're programmers with a very big mission.
It is, and they recognize it. Then, we've had on Sentinel some developers that were with us from the very front back in 2010. It's unusual for contractors to be with one team for that long. They recognize what they're doing is important.
So what would you tell somebody who wanted to work at the FBI about what's it like or how to apply?
How to apply? Go to FBIJobs.gov. There's a listing of all the positions that are open, and apply. Make sure that you're going to be able to pass a security clearance.
How does somebody make sure that they can pass the security clearance?
Okay. Be good to not have an arrest record.
For a felony or a misdemeanor or?
So if you go to the website, then it'll tell you everything that you need to know about getting through a security clearance and applying.
Okay. Yeah.
All the requirements. Currently,
obviously, people aren't making a ton of money, so you really got to be into the mission, and you got to move around a bit. Sometimes they move you with certain jobs.
Mostly that's the agents. Yeah, the agents will move around, and the intelligence analysts. For the IT guys, we usually stay pretty much where we're at. If we want to move, we do have the opportunity to move around, yes.
So where's the head of IT for the FBI? Is he in D.C. or here?
He's in D.C.
Okay, so you report to that guy in D.C.
I report to
a
couple layers.
But you're here in San Francisco.
I am.
Is there a connection, the fact that you're in San Francisco, which is a tech hub, and you're in IT?
Well, we have come out here to San Francisco and Silicon Valley to talk to the industry leaders about what's coming up next, and to make sure that we're going along, in the right path to help. We like to say, keeping up with the speed of crime.
Right. Wow.
Because it's hard. Because criminals, they'll do whatever they can to get a leg up on us. We need to try to keep up with them.
Right. So this new program that you put in, is it all done?
It's operational. We went into operation in July of 2012, so our 5th anniversary will be July 1st. We update it every month.
So this is this Sentinel program, so it's really important and it keeps getting worked on, but it's making it much better for the...
It makes it better. We're adding in additional features. We're integrating some other applications so that the agents don't have to go to so many different applications. They can just go to Sentinel and do more and more of what they would have to go and do,
something here, something there.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So is there anything else you want to share with people about your experience working at the FBI?
The FBI is a great place to work. Great stand-up people that you work with. And you can take pride in working at the FBI.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for being
Thank you for inviting me.
And you've been listening to You're Hired here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. We'll see you next week.